So when it comes to the kind of lever end of things, this is, like I say, the bleed kit's very, very useful, but you're going to want to level your lever out a little bit. That's just for your people that are not using the bleed kit, because obviously if you don't level it out, then what's going to happen is the fluid's going to leak from here quite easily. Yeah, the other thing is you can actually, when you're, let's take this plunger out. So when you're actually bleeding, you can actually kind of move the lever downwards and then upwards, and then, you know, you move the handlebars and just try and get the lever into different positions, just in case there's bits of air trapped in a certain bit of it. I've had quite a bit of success kind of, you know, bleeding things like that and then going into a kind of lower position. But yeah, there's all those kind of things. For this, I'm just going to do it nice and straight for now. I'm just going to chuck a bit of fluid in there. So yeah, in terms of the caliper end, we've actually got like a hose. If we can get that in shot, there we go. It's like a PVC hose, and that's a connector that Hope do. But you could basically just buy some of this PVC tubing. I think they do it for aquariums and stuff like that. I'm not too sure on the size. I'll measure it up and then I'll put it in the description. But I think it's 4 or 5 millimeter stuff, and that's just going to go over the bleed nipple like that. I'm just going to thread it through the bike just to take some of the weight off the hose, otherwise it will drop off. See, that's the kind of setup that we have. There we go for that. And then it's just a case of pumping the brake lever. You hold the brake lever in, open the bleed nipple, close the bleed nipple, let go of the lever, and it's kind of straightforward really. And if we come up with any issues, I'll just talk through them. So yeah, I'm just going to pump the lever, and we're just going to open the bleed nipple, close, pump the lever, and it's basically just a process of repeating that. And obviously the fluid in the lever will be going down at the same time, so make sure you keep that topped up, because if it runs out then you're just going to drag it through the system. And obviously we've had the hose and everything apart, so there's basically just air in this system at the moment. There's very, very little fluid. Sure if it's going to pick it up on camera, but there's loads of tiny little bubbles in the fluid. There's not really any big ones yet anyway. So at this point we've basically used up most of the fluid in the reservoir. So all that fluid that we chucked in there is basically gone through the system. So I'm just going to top that up and hope that this little thing doesn't fall off. So yeah, we've probably done about 1.5 of those tubs that's on the bleed kit of fluid. So I probably would have expected a little bit, or a lot better lever feel. It's only after a few pumps that you actually get the lever to go hard. So what I'm going to do is remove this caliper and then turn it around probably 90 degrees, or just let it hang from the bike, and then I'll bleed it from there, and hopefully we'll see a load of air come out into the hose. So yeah, always wanted to kind of just be straight up and honest. I know a lot of people, they do YouTube and they have the ability to edit things and just hide them, but I started to notice quite a bit of fluid around this area, and if I squeeze that brake, few times. I don't know if you can see, but there's little bits of fluid leaking out from that sill right there. I mean, where the hell is this camera focusing on? Come on. You can probably just see the bit of shiny fluid there. Come on. So yeah, it looks like I didn't actually tighten that properly. So I'm just going to do that now. So that's why it's always worth basically just hold the lever down. And if you find that lever's initially quite hard and then it's going to the handlebars after a while, then that probably means it's pushing fluid out somewhere, and that's where you're losing the pressure. But yeah, that wasn't, I think I just put that on there by hand maybe and didn't tighten it at all. But it kind of shows you how good the little seals are, because there's quite a lot of pressure going through there, and the fact that it wasn't really tightened down and still was able to do a half decent job. There we go. So hopefully that will be better, and that's probably why we was getting a spongy feel. All the pressure that we was building up by bleeding was just coming out there really. I've detached the hose from the bike, so we're just going to let that hang and then bleed it. And what we want is for the bleed nipple to be at the higher point, so we want it to be like that with the hose attached, so that any air in this kind of area and back here can travel up and come out there, rather than where it's mounted on the bike like that and the bleed nipple's lower than there. That can cause an issue. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So yeah, what we're going to do is pump the brake, and hopefully I can do this one-handed now and then get a good shot, and you can see all the air coming out of the system. Pretty much solid. It's actually hurting my hand to try and squeeze the lever any harder. So we'll do another one, see if we've got more air. It's nice and clear. So yeah, so that seems all good as well. And now all we need to do is kind of mount it all and do the fun part where we need to align the disc. Yeah, so what I want to do now is, now the caliper's sorted, the lever feels good, so that's your kind of, that's your modulation, and then after that it's pretty much, that's as hard as I can pull that lever, and that's how you know really. If you hold on to that and you just keep that pressure on there, and if you find that the lever is just moving back and back and back, and there's probably a leak somewhere. But even if you find like it gets to that point and you can still move the lever quite a lot more than this, so that's all I can do. That's all I can do at that point. If you find that your lever's moving back and forth, then yeah, you could have an issue with seals and stuff like that. Or it could be down to your bleed process as well. But ultimately what I'm saying is, once you've bled them properly with that bleed block in place, I mean, you should just have a tiny bit of lever movement, and then it should be like seriously hard and solid to move. I just wanted to show you that I wanted to do a lever only bleed, just in case there's any air trapped within the master cylinder body. So if we just pop that onto there somewhere, there we go. So what we're going to do is just flick that lever and just see if any air comes up through the system. The other thing as well is we need a laser pen pointer to know where I'm aiming at. There we go. We're just going to loosen the bolt that's holding this lever on. Try and go out of it. There we go. That's a bit better. And if we try and tilt that forward a little bit to the point, just make sure the hole's covered up with fluid. And then we do the same process with the lever at this angle, and then you might find you get a few little air bubbles. You might find that it's totally fine. and there's nothing else doing it. And then all I would do is basically do the same, but turn it backwards so that the lever's facing the air. So the lever's more like that. Yeah, so this is basically the lever kind of tilted upwards. I don't know why on these cameras when you put the screen up it's sort of like a reverse image, so you see me kind of doing this a lot. I can't look for it on the backwards, on the reverse image. It's just I can't work it out. See, I'm behind the camera now. There you go, there's 3 little group of bubbles popping up. And just getting these little ones out will just improve your lever feel as well. Maybe them bubbles were in there all the time and they didn't actually pop up, I'm not sure. But yeah, it seems alright. Maybe just give your handlebar a little tap. Yeah, I do think there's little ones coming through. It's on the highest reach setting. I always bleed them on the highest reach setting because it means that I can get a consistent feel. And that's basically me pulling as hard as I can with my fingers. So that's good as well. And also there's a pad adjustment thing on here as well, which is basically this. And we don't run that either. So we have that wound all the way out, and that allows the piston to move back further. But that's a lot of people, I don't know if they realise it's a BPC, it's like a bite point adjust. So it basically brings the lever down like that, so that you have less travel in the lever before it's locking up. So it reduces some of the modulation. It just means when your pads get low, you can bring them closer to the disc. But yeah, we're going to sort out this, put the top cap on, and then get onto the disc. So yeah, it's quite a lengthy video to go through it all. So yeah, before we kind of put this back on, just wanted to go through piston condition, and if you wanted to clean them and lubricate them as well. So what Hope recommend is something called Hope, well, it's not Hope, it's Hunter grease. It basically comes in this little bottle here. It's a little green bottle, and it's a lubrication that works well with rubber seals. So yeah, this stuff, and that's just going to help the piston slide on the seals. Obviously the seals block that lube from ever entering the inners of the caliper, only really sits on the edges. And then other tools as well. There's another 3D printed thing that you can use if you wanted to get like one piston moving. You could do something like that, and then as you pump the brake you will pull out that one piston, and then if you wanted to you could just get a little cotton bud and give that a little clean up. So there's your bit of dirt on there, and then on the other end I'd put a bit of the Hunter grease. So let's grab a little bit of that. It's a lot of hairs sticking off. So yeah, it's just a clear lubricant. And then what you can do is basically just wipe that around the piston. You're not going to get round the whole thing. You're not going to be able to do 360. There's always going to be this bit, which is kind of hidden. But yeah, and then if you do that to all 4 of your pistons, that should be good. As for chips, I don't know if you can see on this bottom one, there's a very small chip there, but that's not going to go down far enough to interact with the seal. Normally you can get away with chips that are just on the top of the piston. So let's say the piston's seals on this side are going to sit within this region here, within this thicker bit of metal that they've machined on there. So I'd probably say you've got a couple of mil, maybe like 1 to 2 millimeters before the seal actually starts, so you can get away with chips at the top of the piston. But anything a bit lower might interact with the piston and end up ripping it and causing like premature kind of damage to that. So that's something to think about. And if you did want to buy a set of pistons, I think they're about £5 each. So for each caliper, it's only like £20 for a set of brand new pistons. They're phalonic, so it's made of like a plastic that can deal with like heat a bit better than the metal ones, and they don't get scratched like metal pistons. So that's obviously a good thing. I think where they're this plastic material also means they're not going to corrode. So there's less chance of them getting seized and whatnot in there. So yeah, let's get back to this. So our original problem was that we couldn't push the pistons in without the other pistons coming out. So yeah, moment of truth if we've solved that problem. And there we go. I was able to push that one out. These ones are sticking out a tiny bit. And that's probably because the bleed block isn't a perfect fit. And yeah, what I decided to do on the lever end is leave the bleed kit on there. So if you didn't have the bleed kit, you just leave the reservoir open, and it just gives you more options really to play with all this. So yeah, hopefully we can mount this. I'm going to go ahead and put the 183 disc on the wheel, because I don't really want to mount this to the 180 and then have to change everything after. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that that will actually work now. And just make sure your little bleed nipples nipped up. They don't need a lot of force on them. And yeah, just give it a good clean up as well before you put it back on your bike. Yeah, so now you should have your pistons pushed back into your caliper. So after you take your bleed block out, just push your pistons back as far as they'll go. And that means that you won't overfill the system. If you imagine that your pistons had come out a little bit in the caliper and then you bought new pads and the new pads were thicker, and then you'd have to push the pistons in, but you would have had this all kind of sealed up. There would be nowhere for that excess fluid to go. So yeah, with this system you get a little plunger with it that just goes in there, and you can take that off. Pretty straightforward. And then you've got your little Torx keys here, which is a bit smaller than that actually. These are T15s. They're not even T15s, man. They're even smaller than that. Yes, they're actually T10s. So you can unscrew that. And we will basically show you that, and you can already see that it's overfilling a bit. And that's what I was saying with the tech levers, or the tech free levers. This end is higher than this end, so all the fluid's going to end up at this side, which is alright because that's where the holes are, but it kind of makes stuff like this a little bit of a nuisance. And you can level it up, but I prefer not to. I just leave it how it's going to sit on the bike. And then you're going to grab you've got your top cap there with the bolts and the rubber diaphragm. Just going to remove that rubber diaphragm from that. Oh, I dropped it. There we go. Dropped it on the floor. Get that clean. And then you're going to basically peel it on. So you're going to push one end on and then slide the other end on. What you don't want to do is just put it on like that, because you might trap air in the system. So the way that they kind of recommend is that you kind of roll it on from one end to the other. I do find that this will just leak quite a lot. So I like to pull it off again and just give it a little wipe down. Otherwise you'll have like a lot of, it's not really leaking, but it's kind of getting rid of excess fluid from the top cap. And if you just dry this off a bit, it should stop that happening, or at least kind of reduce it a little bit. So yeah. So I'm just going to drop that into there, roll that into there. Grab your top cap. Just going to stick that onto there. And then these bolts, what I tend to do is just go from left to right or right to left. So I'm just going to leave that loose. And get that to about the same amount of tension. And then do like a quarter turn, and then you kind of feel them. They basically run out of thread or they just go hard. And then I just do a little nip on each one, and then hopefully by doing it kind of left to right or right to left, you're going to get that cap on there nice and straight, and that should seal it pretty well. And then I would advise that either wash this down with water or use some sort of alcohol spray, which is what I tend to use. But yeah, that's that for now.